Welcome to the comeback season, where we have real conversations about fueling your body, rebuilding strength, and stepping back into the life you were meant to live. Whether you've been caring for kids, aging parents, or just lost sight of your own needs, we see you. And this is your season to rise. Hello, my name is Nichole McLeod with Healthy Mind, Healthy Body. I'm a mindset and fitness coach and the author of I Started on a Tuesday. I know what it feels like to lose yourself in the chaos and still hold on to the hope that something better is coming.
And I'm Christi Kelsey from Christi Counts Macros, nutrition and mindset coach and food freedom advocate. I've worked with lots of women who felt stuck, restricted, and unsure where to even begin. Together, we're bringing you honest conversations, healing truths, and real strategies to help you rise again, physically, mentally, and emotionally, whether you've hit rock bottom or you're just tired of putting yourself last. This space is for you because this is your comeback season and it starts right now.
Hello, my friends. It's Nichole here, and welcome back to the comeback season. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we're digging into something that's so real for so many of us. Why sticking to a healthy plan isn't just about what you eat, but how you think. As someone who's lived through the emotional roller coaster of starting over and finally choosing to take care of myself from the inside out, I've learned that true transformation starts in your mind. So today, we're going there and the mental side of nutrition, food triggers, control, and learning to meet ourselves with grace.
And I'm Christy, your macro girl and mindset focused nutrition coach. I've worked with so many people who come to me thinking they just need the perfect meal plan to fix everything. But the truth is, food isn't the root, it's a symptom. I love helping people look beyond the plate to understand their patterns, their stress responses, and how their brains are wired to seek safety and comfort. This episode is about helping you see that nutrition isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional. And the more we understand that, the more freedom we gain. So, Nichole, let's talk about why meal plans don't work for long-term success.
It's funny, when we started talking about this topic, I'm like, there may be some listeners that are considering the fact that it sounds contradicting, because here I'm always talking about have a plan is so great. But the missing part that we didn't discuss before, I still feel that it's very important to have a plan. But it's discipline absolutely gets you started. And that's when you start having that plan, you have the discipline, you keep going, but it's the flexibility that keeps you going. So you would need to identify that. It's not just about having that meal plan, but it's the ability to learn from it, learn the parameters of it, and then be able to adjust and move forward. Like life happens. So if we don't have just boundaries per se, instead of always having to have a strict, rigid plan with zero flexibility, it's not reasonable. And I personally feel that's the biggest reason why, if you have a plan and you're being too strict, if you don't have that ability to be flexible with it, it may not come out as easy for you. What about you?
Yes, a lot of clients ask me for a meal plan, and I don't do meal plans for people because as soon as I tell you what to eat, you're going to want something else.
Yep, so
So
true.
it is about that flexibility and having a plan, but also having the flexibility to pivot when things
Yes.
come up so that things like a party or a work event doesn't throw you off and make everything fall apart. Um, Tracking macros is is all about flexibility, and your
Yeah.
plans should move with your life, not against it. It shouldn't make it harder. So meal plans can tell you what to eat, but they don't answer why you're eating in the first place. And that
Mhm.
why is often emotional. So let's talk about that.
I actually want to circle back here for a second. And one thing that I heard someone say, gosh, it was like a month ago, that really hit home, and I'm like, that's it, is the difference between routine and ritual. So
Mhm.
with routine, that's the helping you survive, autopilot. I have to do this. And I'm not saying that routine is important. A lot of the times, it's routine that keeps us on track, especially when life gets difficult. But the difference with rituals, it's intentional. It's
Mhm.
like having the presence. I get to do this. I want to do this for my body. And that is the root for the emotional eating standpoint. Is we're so quick to rely on structure, which really will only give us that temporary success, in my opinion. But when you learn, because it is a learning strategy, when you learn how to be flexible in the moment, it's going to get you to the next level. But just taking it step further is learning to be flexible on a ritual, essentially. So we are more focused on the intentionalness of it, intentionally being flexible, learning the boundaries, the parameters of what will keep us in our success zone, but with that flexibility, but understanding the why behind it. And it starts, in my opinion, with the intention and presence with
Mhm.
it. But
Mm.
let's talk about emotions now, because that absolutely is part two.
Yes, it is. So, emotional eating is a common experience.
Yeah.
Probably everybody does it at some point or another, and it might not be exactly what you think it is. For me, I always imagined emotional eating as, a woman at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the cupboard with a sleeve of Oreos.
So true.
And maybe that's what it does look like for
Yep.
you. But it can also be snacking on popcorn and candy at a movie or having hot chocolate on a cold winter's night.
Yeah. Because it really comes down to a resilient mindset.
Mhm.
Yes, having that plan of what you're going to do in when things go a certain way. But if you're resilient enough, resilience and flexibility, man, those just said it right now. Those are the two things that you got to keep going, because so many people in emotional eating, especially when your mind's not in the right place, you give up. That is the time when I see my clients give in, give up. It's not worth it. I can't do it. I can't. They've made the decision to tell their brain they can't do it. When really, it's like what you said, it's just a little pivot. It's just a little change in how we perceive things that'll allow us to get to that next step.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, too, with emotional eating, when you're in that process, stop and ask yourself, what's my trigger? Why
Mhm.
am I doing this? I know darn well I can't go back to Oreos. Eating a bag of Oreos sometimes feels good, I guess. Not so much. I haven't done that in years, but to some people it does. But understand, why do I feel the need to poison myself in this way? Sometimes it's great. Sometimes you're like, okay, well, this treat is what I needed. But asking yourself the questions is really important, in my opinion, because it really focuses on getting to the root, the foundation of it.
I agree. And so many different things can trigger emotional eating. It could be your environment.
Yes.
Every time I go to, this particular friend's house, we have ice cream sundaes and I just can't stop eating. Or it could be an emotion like we talked about. And different emotions or common emotions are like stress, loneliness, boredom,
Mm.
or we can use it to heighten celebration, heighten fun. And I think that's where a lot of us get into trouble, really. I mean, you think about the holidays and how we just know during those 6 weeks or so between here in the US, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas or New Year's even. We just know that we're going to eat a lot. There are foods that are going to come out that we don't have other times of year, um, and we're going to overindulge. We know that.
Yep. It's gonna happen. We talked about that in our summer months. It's
Yeah.
4th of July tomorrow, and we just had Canada Day, and yeah,
Yeah.
there's celebration, there's food, there's, but it's that moderation. It's coming back to understanding the why behind it. We I talked about this yet a couple episodes or two. I can't talk. A couple episodes ago, I talked about the fact that we link our goals with our suffering.
Yeah.
We feel that it's this, we have to go through and endure this horrible thing to get to our goals. But if we just changed it, that food, we are taught when we were young that food is either a reward or a comfort.
Mhm.
It's not. Why can't we shift that perspective and say, you know what? Yes, of course it sometimes is a reward, because I definitely reward myself, and sometimes it definitely makes me feel comfortable. But when you realize that food is the foundation of every single positive aspect in your life, because it nourishes your body, it nourishes your brain. And if you start changing that perspective of, I'm not forcing myself to eat this. I'm having, more of a ritual mindset. I want to eat this because I feel so darn good when I do. And when you start training your brain to think that way, it's amazing what automatically you start eating better, you start feeling better.
Yeah. Yeah, and really emotional eating it's a signal from your nervous system. It's not
Mhm.
from a lack of willpower. Your subconscious is trying to buffer you from feeling those negative
That's
emotions.
right.
And so recognizing your triggers is a really good thing to get in the habit of, whether that's a particular food, a particular emotion, a particular person,
Yes.
particular environment. If you know that there's something that triggers that emotional eating, then you want to prepare yourself for
Yeah.
that. And it can be really freeing when you name the emotion that you're feeling instead of shaming it. And if you know what that emotion is, then
It's good.
then you can get curious and start asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why do I always feel this way when I talk to, I don't know, my sister-in-law on the phone
Mm,
or something like that, and see what comes up for you and how can we address it without food? What
love
else?
that.
What else could your body or your mind be telling you? Oftentimes, if we just pause and pay attention to what our physical signals are, you'll recognize that with emotional eating, you're not physically hungry. You're craving probably quick energy like sugar or
Mhm.
highly processed foods. And if you're physically hungry, you could have a carrot and you'd be happy to have that nourishment.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger.
That's so true. Let's just add on to that, and why we try to control food so tightly. We have this misconception in our heads that it's all or none, right? Um, and I actually wrote about this in my book, that the clients that jump in full force, no fun in life, have very strict routines, strict everything, have probably a 90% less chance of following through and continuing on with that lifestyle, because it gets too much.
Mhm.
So, how does all that backfire?
Yeah, so I love to use the pendulum in this metaphor because when you think about if you have a big, heavy pendulum hanging in front of you, when you pull it up to one side, let's say that's extreme restriction or rigid control, what happens when you let go? It doesn't just stop in the middle, it swings hard to the
Yes.
opposite direction. And that opposite side is binge or rebellion, overindulgence. And it's not because you're weak. That's just it's physics.
Hmm.
Might not think that emotional eating would be physics, but the harder you restrict, the harder you swing back. And I will tell you from personal experience that that is true. So I'll just share a quick experience that I've had myself. So I noticed every time I made cookies, I would eat like 6 cookies.
I was going to say all of them.
Yes. On baking day.
The cookies.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just, eat until I was sick, literally sick. And I knew that I would feel sick if I ate another cookie, but I still did. And then I realized that I don't eat cookies any other time. And I love cookies. They're one of my favorite foods. And so when I started loosening the reins a little bit and allowing myself to have a cookie every once in a while, then now when I make cookies, I don't feel that need to get it all in right now while the cookies are out on the counter. So that's just one example of that extreme restrict and then rebellion.
You
And
know,
that,
I if my best friend, well, when she hears this, she'll say, "See, I told you." Because I admit, I do love food. I just don't buy the bad stuff. And I know if I buy it, I do buy it for myself as a treat, but I choose to just not put myself into that situation. But I do feel that what you just said is probably the better way to go because you're teaching yourself that control is, not always a bad thing and that you are able to indulge a bit within that because the reality is a lot of people don't have that. We look back at our childhood. For me personally, I had a very difficult childhood, which a lot of us have those stories. And food was one of the only things that I could control. So I didn't eat. I
mm,
very much struggled with my eating my whole entire life. And I never understood why I did it. But looking back and after going through and getting the help much later in life, I realized that a lot of my bad relationships with food stemmed from my childhood, my formative years. And I
mm,
think there's a lot of people that do that. If it's people that have grown up with limited food, they're going to gorge there when they get access to food. They're going to eat a lot. I have a friend that adopted two young girls at the age of two, and they were very much abused and neglected. They didn't have access to food. And when they adopted these girls, they literally had to lock up the food because it went, like you said, with the pendulum way to the other side. And they had no ability to stop eating because it was like, this was my fight or flight, my control. I need to eat because I don't know when the food's coming next.
mm,
So I
mm.
think when we're talking about triggers and really stepping back to think about what is triggering me, what is setting me off, and the why, that
Yeah.
why behind it is very important. Very, very important. Because really restriction almost feels powerful until it
Yeah.
doesn't work anymore. And then all of a sudden you're a prisoner, you know?
Yes. And another kind of side note to this is when we label foods good and bad. And um, it's not that it's not, yes, there are foods that are more nutritionally dense than other foods. I understand that. But oftentimes when we label things good and bad, then if I eat a bad food, I start telling myself I'm bad because
Yes.
I ate this bad food, which, it creates shame and it's not true. But then you go on to the next step, which is, well, I blew it. I might as well go all in
Eat it
and eat
all, eat all the
all
cookies.
the cookies.
I'm eating the cookies.
And then that's when things start adding up and we start to gain weight because of the emotional eating.
You know what? There's so much truth to that. And none of us are perfect. And this was definitely a learning for me later in life. But my kids didn't grow up having a bunch of treats in the house. They just didn't. I just didn't buy it. We definitely had treat days and we did things, but it wasn't there. And every time we'd go to my friend's house, she had all the things. So my kids loved going to her house. But then when everybody grew up and they were able to, have their own money and go out and buy whatever they wanted, my kids definitely had more McDonald's days because it was this thing they never got. And I can do this now and I have the control to do this. So I do feel there's that healthy, happy medium or middle ground, I guess you could say.
Yes, in fact, when we find that middle ground, let's say the pendulum is swinging happily in the center, just, we're not going too far to the left or too far to the right, that signals to our brain, hey, food isn't off limits anymore. We don't have to panic and swing back and forth between these extremes. And so that's another reason I love macro tracking. It's just, it's data, but we don't want to use that as a weapon or as a way to control what we're eating.
Mhm.
It's just numbers. It gives us information about what we're eating, and it's not a moral scorecard.
That's why I have the most success with clients when I just talk about protein. Look,
Mhm.
rules, eat your protein first, 30
Mhm.
grams per meal. Make sure that happens at least. And then you're not going to eat as many calories when you have that mindset. And it's simple. You
Yeah.
know, this is the problem when you have these very strict plans, it gets hard. And people really don't want to follow through because it comes down to we don't need more food rules. We need more emotional tools.
Mhm.
That makes any sense. You know, we need that, like, okay, so this is what's going on in my head today. This is what I'm going to get the best results with. You want to know your danger zones. You want to
Yeah.
know that time, that mindset when you're not in the good sound mind. And that's when the plan is always good. And your plan might not be a diet plan, it might be a plan of the thing you do that pulls you out of that mental struggle.
Right. Yes, and one of the common emotions that most of us are familiar with is stress. So let's talk about what happens to the brain under stress. What's happening in the brain when we're under stress and craving all the snacks?
I it, it's not a secret for anybody nowadays. We know that stress kills. It's one
Mhm.
of the worst things on our body. Cortisol's rise, your nervous system. We talked about this too. It's the only system you can't get a transplant in. So you have one, you need to make sure that you're treating it well. But what we don't understand is when the stress comes up, the ability to regulate and self-regulate comes down. And when you're in that mindset, you're going to try to self-soothe. You're going to try to calm
Mhm.
it down and you may not even realize it. And that's why there's a lot of people that really struggle with this and obese people that are like, I just, life is stressful. It's tough. And if you don't learn, like I just said, the ability for, to regulate the emotions, because it's not about having that food restriction. It's about learning how to regulate your emotions so that you make wise choices when you're in that moment. I struggle with not eating when I'm having a hard time, and that is equally bad for your body.
Mhm.
Eating the right foods, you're not really in the mindset to, make sure you're getting all your nutrition in. You're having a moment. You're stressed. Life is hard. So I think that we need to take more. We need to take this more serious and we're talking about plans. Having that plan when you feel in that mindset.
Yeah. And I love the analogy that I've heard before of it kind of goes back to caveman days, when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, that adrenaline kicks in and your body needs energy quick. It needs
Yes.
fast energy. And what gives us that quick energy? It's the processed foods that we have now, the sugary foods that gives us quick energy. And then our brain remembers that sugar equals fast relief.
Yeah.
That builds a really strong craving pathway. So we have to rewire our brains. We have to update our response to
Mhm.
those cravings, but not silencing them, but retraining our brain.
Reality is stress hijacks logic on
Mhm.
every level. And those cravings that you're having, could be it could be equaling cortisol and obviously a dopamine hunt and
Mhm.
trying to get that boost of dopamine. And just like you said, sometimes it's through sugar, whatever that is, but that's why our brains are doing that because our brains just want to feel safe. They just want to feel calm. And our body will always try to reach for that. And sometimes it's fooled with foods.
Yeah. So, how do we build a mental plan that will help us through those tough emotions that we feel from day to day?
Awareness first.
Yes. Yes. So, the first
Yeah.
step is to just notice. Notice that you're having those strong emotions and ask yourself what's really going on right now. Um, when we when we observe what's going on and give ourselves a minute to just think about it, what are the emotions and what does my body really need right now? It's probably something other than food.
Yeah.
It might be rest. It might be a walk outside. It might
Mhm.
be just compassion for yourself and just to say, yeah, this has been a really tough day.
And giving yourself, like you just said, compassion, giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
And understanding and meeting yourself where you're at. You're
Mhm.
not always going to have the same great days. You're not always going to have bad days. They'll
Mhm.
pass, but it's recognizing, being aware and alert of that. For me, it's journaling. Hands down, for me, the quickest way to calm my mind, to understand why I'm thinking the way I am, and I used to think that was so silly, understanding your triggers, but oh
Mhm.
my goodness, I couldn't have been so wrong. Yeah, understanding what sets you off is critical because
Mhm.
it actually creates that space of understanding that it's not necessarily the food, it's more the feelings. You can't change what you're unwilling to understand or name. Just like we've talked about before, giving things names and understanding that this will pass, but understanding it for what it is.
Yes. And also noticing where you feel it in your body because
Yes.
different emotions can be felt in different parts of your body.
Mhm.
And sometimes I've noticed that once I name an emotion and recognize where I'm feeling it in my body, the next time I feel it, I might feel it physically first and then connect it back to the emotion. And last week we interviewed Ricky and she talked about breath work, which was amazing. If you
So
haven't
good.
you haven't heard that one yet, go back and listen to it. But she took us through a what did she call that? Where we started at the top of the head, body scan.
Body scanning, yeah.
Yes, and she took us through this wonderful exercise, this body scan, and just going through the different parts of our body and what we feel there. And I actually had some unexpected things come
So
up
did I.
while we were doing that, and it was really neat. So breath work can really help. Just even if you just take a deep breath, you don't have to do any, there's different ways to do breath work, but even if you just take a deep breath or going for a walk outside, I find that incredibly releasing when I just go for a walk around the neighborhood.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. Overthinking and overcomplicating something that is already in a chaotic mind that you're trying to calm is not going to help. And like you just said, deep box breathing, it's a go-to, and walking, where both things are readily available to you. So let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about emotional regulation. Critical, in my opinion. One of the most important life tools you can learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, what do you use for your clients, Nichole?
Well, back to journaling. We talk a lot about understanding. So the first thing with emotional regulation and true emotional intelligence is understanding the why behind it. Consciousness, being
Mhm.
aware of it, and then
Mhm.
interrupting those loops that are the self-sabotaging. We know when we're doing things a lot of the time that are not serving us. And so giving yourself grace, but giving yourself that time in between that to recognize that.
Mhm.
Take the moments to yourself. Take that time. It doesn't have to be long. Emotional regulation and the ability to just stop. Okay, I'm feeling whatever anger in my body. I can, like you just said, we can feel it in our body most of the times in our chest and our back. Feeling that tension and then breathing through it and then stopping to listen to yourself and feel yourself, be intentional with it, understand that. And when you dig a little deeper, that's where you start to learn the next direction and if you're pivoting or not and what needs to happen. And many times after you do that breath work and you take the time to understand it and you write down your thoughts, you just feel better.
Mhm. Yeah, I love this idea of building a non-food comfort menu.
Yes. Yes.
Might be wrapping up in a cozy blanket and just resting on the couch for 15 minutes,
Mhm.
texting a friend. It might be going for a walk out in nature or stretching, playing some music, tapping into that parasympathetic nervous
Mhm.
system, the rest and digest kind of um, situation.
My kids learned at a very young age that if I was having my moments, mom needed to go work out. And
Mhm.
that is will always be my go-to. I have never in my life had a workout and thought, "Oh, I wish I didn't do that. Oh, I feel worse." When has that ever happened? You don't hear of it, right? So,
Yeah.
for me, that is the number 1 on my comfort list is working out, praying to God,
Mhm.
and breathing, journaling. Those are my go-tos for sure.
Yes, I'll add to the journaling part of it is gratitude, like a gratitude journal, writing down the things that you're grateful for. And then you realize, hey, things aren't so bad.
It is biologically impossible to be anxious and grateful simultaneously. We've talked about that too. So if
Mhm.
you are anxious, you are depressed, I had a young kid talking to me the other day, and he's like telling me all the things he was feeling. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have this problem, that problem. Of course you do. You've just told your brain that, and it's listening. It
Mhm.
absolutely is listening to you. So being mindful of the things you're grateful for. So when he was having this panic attack, I said, "Look at these beautiful mountains. Look at what are you grateful for right now?" And he's telling me all the things he's grateful for. And all of a sudden, he talked his way through this panic attack and was okay. I'm not saying it's always that easy when catastrophic things happen in your life, but being intentional about the fact that now at least you cannot be anxious and depressed and all those other emotions while simultaneously being grateful for what you have. And I've also had people say, "I'm thinking of all the things I'm grateful for." Well, you're just verbalizing them. That doesn't mean you're believing them. So you have to in your heart feel them, even if you're being grateful not verbally out loud. In your head, truly wholeheartedly think of what all the things are you're grateful for. This living in North America alone is one wonderful thing to be grateful for. Things like that. There's always something.
Yeah.
So
I
let's
guess
Oh,
these would
sorry.
all be under the term of self-care. And self-care is, we throw that term around. It's not just fluff. It's real and it's your emotional backup plan.
Let's be honest. When you're having a hard time, brushing your teeth can be a chore. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. And we don't talk about it. We're just, oh, once you're an adult, you have this expectation that you have to be perfectly happy or perfectly whatever all the time. But life is hard. Some days you don't want to get dressed. Some days, but you have to be mindful of the why to get yourself through it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about flexible nutrition mindset. So,
Okay.
why do we need to be flexible with our nutrition?
So, as we've discussed earlier, sometimes things come up and that throws us off. So, flexibility allows us to pivot and kind of reinvent our plan from this point forward. No
So
food is
true.
bad. Macros are just information, and food is fuel and joy, culture, connection. It can be all of those things. It can also just be neutral.
Ooh,
And it's a really great place to be in when you look at food from a neutral point of view. It's not, it doesn't have a moral value. It's not good or bad. It just is. So one thing that I tell my clients is allow yourself to have some fun foods. And if you're tracking your macros, log that first before anything else, and
mhm.
then build the rest of your day around that. And you'll fit it in.
For me, let go of the all or nothing mindset. And
Mm,
that's big coming from me because that is something that I have struggled with my entire life. but surrendering to that and realizing it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Because when your mindset shifts, that meal plan follows because you have a different perspective on it. A more, you have the ability to make more mindful choices.
Yeah. Yeah. So next time you feel the urge to reach for comfort food, just pause and ask yourself, what do I really need right now?
And how can I meet that need with kindness, not
Yeah.
punishment? Absolutely. Well, great talk, my friend. For our listeners, we hope this helped you see that real change doesn't come from obsessing over what's on your plate. It comes from understanding what's in your heart and in your mind. When you build a mental plan, you don't just eat differently, you live differently.
If this resonated with you, send it to a friend who's stuck in the start over Monday cycle. You're not alone, and you don't have to figure it out alone either.
And come find us, whether you're ready for macro support or mindset coaching or just need a safe place, to be honest. We're here to help you at the comeback season during your comeback.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening to the comeback season. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the comeback season. Please remember, the conversations we share here are for informational and motivational purposes only. We are not licensed medical professionals, and this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or replace guidance from your doctor or your healthcare provider. Always consult your healthcare team before making changes to your nutrition, your fitness, or your mental health routines. Your health and well-being comes first, and we want you to move forward safely with the right support for your journey.